Hello, I'm Steve Feldman, president of the Human Animal Bond Research Institute. Welcome back to another session of Pet Week on Capitol Hill. Today, we're going to be joined by Susanne Kogut, the president of Petco Love, a wonderful nonprofit that's helping pets in so many ways. Rather than listen to me talk about it, let's watch a short video about Petco Love, and then I'll be back with you in a sec.
Petco Love is the manifestation of the loving side of Petco. I have this aspiration for us as a company, a family, Petco and Petco Love, to eliminate unnecessary euthanasia. We're going to get there.
We're also going to provide you another Petco Love grant of $50,000.
We didn't have the funds. And then came Petco, and that was when we saw the lights. We were able to build the cages on the second floor.
This is a game changer for our pets and our families.
The Petco Love team and the Petco stores, they are really truly leaders in animal welfare.
Petco Love changes lives every day, from supporting animal welfare organizations in the face of disaster to providing critical aid in Ukraine. Petco Love makes communities and pet families closer, stronger, and healthier. Since 1999, we've empowered life-saving work in communities like yours and mine. Petco Love turns even the smallest donations into big impact.
This is one of hundreds of grants that Petco Love recently announced, totaling more than $15 million nationwide.
It's going to allow us to make this a better community because our lives are better with pets.
We have not euthanized a cat for room in a little over 2 years, which is really only because of this partnership with Petco Love.
People are waiting in line for these adoption events at Petco stores that we're partnering with. It's incredible to see lives changing.
Adoption day is always my favorite day.
I wanted a companion. Every time I turned, those eyes were following me.
It's literally at the core of what we do here at Petco.
She was right there at this house at the corner. I would recommend Petco Love Lost to other owners when their pets are missing.
If it wasn't for Petco Love Lost, I would not have found her.
We're offering vaccine for dogs and cats to vaccinate against parvovirus, distemper, and panleukopenia. All are very preventable, but can be potentially fatal if that disease is contracted.
It feels wonderful that my family's protected. This is the first time I've been able to get them vaccinated.
Our commitment to improving pet lives doesn't stop there. We will continue to bring transformative programs and innovative life-saving technology to pets and families. We are telling our story and spreading the word to inspire and empower animal lovers across the country. As change agents for good in the lives of pets, we will never stop leading the charge to create a life-saving nation.
I'm already feeling inspired. And now let's welcome Susanne Kogut, president of Petco Love.
Thanks, Steve. And as always, it's my pleasure to be here with you today. For the last 2 years at Pet Week, I've discussed the current animal welfare data and really looking at what's happening at our nation's shelters. Because we really firmly believe the better the data, the better our ability to create life-saving solutions. So this year, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to look at the animal welfare data, but also I'm going to go a little bit beyond and look at some other general data points, their conflict, what's missing, and how perhaps we can remedy the quest for better pet parentship data so that not only can we save pets, but we can plan better for how to help people. But first, we're going to start with where we have some actual real data, and that's really looking at what's the state of pets in our shelters and looking at some data there. Before I start, I always caution that we still don't have a complete data set for our shelters, and the data that I will be presenting today is from 24 Pet Watch. 24 Pet Watch has 2 shelter software systems that they use, and they're consolidating that data to really look at the trends that are happening in our nation's shelters. And before we start, I always say we're going to look at 2 sides of data, what's happening on the intake and what's happening to the pets on the outgoing. So pets are coming into shelters and then pets will go out of shelters, and we'll look at some trend lines there. So I'm going to start at looking with pets coming into our shelters. So we now have about 4 to 5 million pets entering our shelters annually, probably closer to that 4 million mark at this point. I'm also going to show trend lines going forward on 2019, which is pre-COVID, and 2020, 2021, and 2022, because we'll see some significant differences on these lines. And I always like to say too, I think we look at the data much too simplistically and sort of draw conclusions. So when we look at the trend lines, some of those trends, we may look at them and say, hey, they can drive policies and solutions for saving pets. But often the reverse is the case too. Policies and activities can actually be the result of what's happening on the trend lines. So if you look at 2020 and you see a dip in intake of pets going into shelters, that had nothing to do with the fact that shelter pets didn't need help. It had simply to do with shelters, like most businesses, closed to intake, and they were limited to emergency intake only, perhaps similar to hospitals where they weren't doing elective or non-emergency procedures. Shelters weren't taking in animals unless they were in emergent situations. So, but since that time, you can see that the intake levels in shelters and pets coming into shelters has been fairly stable in 2021 and so far in 2022. The next slide, which I show year after year, is always referred to as my myth busting slide. So I think this year, what we've heard so far, and we've heard some stories around rising housing costs is driving people to relinquish their pets to shelters in drove. But as you can see on this graph, the actual pets being relinquished as a percent of shelter intake is actually not any higher in 2022 than it was in 2021. In fact, it's lower. So the reasons pets may be relinquished and brought into shelters by pet parents that can't care for them may be due to rising housing costs. But the number of those pets is not any higher this year as it has been in the past. In fact, what we see is the main reason that pets are coming into shelters is they're coming in as what we call stray. And I put stray in quotes because I want to talk a little bit about what that is. Stray really refers to lost pets that people find and are bringing to shelters, hopefully for them to be reclaimed by their owners. And if unclaimed, then adopted out. It could also be, pets that were abandoned. And then you'll see the increase in the summer season. This is often what we call kitten season. And these are kittens that are born to free roaming cats. And now those cats and the kittens are often brought to shelters to then be adopted out. But you'll see that the trend lines are similar year after year, but most of the pets coming into shelters, especially in 2022, are coming in of those stray or lost pets. It's one of the reasons Petco Love created Petco Love Lost as a national lost and found database to try to help people reunite pets directly and really ease the burden on those pets coming in to shelters. Nonetheless, shelters are still struggling in 2022. In fact, we're seeing higher euthanasia rates in 2022 than we have in 20 and 21. And, honestly, as expectations in society have increased about saving shelter pets and saving lives, that increase in euthanasia, it really takes a toll on our shelter workers who are working hard to save the animals, but are often presented with situations that result in euthanasia. And that emotional toll on shelter workers really, that are responsible for caring those pets, it's really heavy. So we're going to look at the reasons behind the euthanasia. First thing we're going to look at is adoption and pets being reunited, lost pets being reunited with owners. And as you can see, these trend lines are stable and very consistent year after year. So we haven't seen a decrease in adoptions this year, and we haven't seen a decrease in the pets being returned to owners. So when you look at that, you would say, well, why the increase in euthanasia? We're going to look a little bit more closely and drill down. What we're seeing this year is that the increase in euthanasia is really driven by the euthanasia of dogs in our shelters. Cats, and I didn't include that graph here, cats was very, very stable and did not increase over prior years. But we did see an increase in the purple line here, 2022, of dogs versus 20 and 21. And the reasons for that are much more complicated than just looking at one or two trend lines. It has a lot to do with logistics and operational efficiencies required to save lives. Because the key to saving lives in shelters is really moving those animals through the process as quickly as we can from the time they come in to the time they're adopted. So I'm going to take a simple example that says if I have 100 kennels and I have 100 animals coming in every week, if it takes me a week to move them through the process, I can save 100 animals every week. And in 2 weeks, I can save 200 pets. If I have 100 animals coming in every week, but it takes me 14 days to move them through the process, in 2 weeks, I can save 100 animals. But if I have 200 animals in, 100 of those are at risk of euthanasia. So as you can see here, the days in care, the time period that animals are spending in the shelter is actually increased significantly, especially in the last few months. And so why is that? Well, the reason for the days in care and that reduction in operational efficiency is really due to labor shortages, especially veterinarian shortages. So Petco Love recently surveyed our animal welfare partners and asked them how they were doing with respect to veterinarians in their organizations. 75% of them reported that they were short-staffed on veterinarians. 74% had indicated that they were short-staffed on vet support, assistance, and techs, and that was resulting in a delay of pets getting the needed veterinarian care they needed to move them through the system very quickly. And it was often resulting in delay in adoptions. So that is really, again, as the time period where the animals have to stay in a building, shelters run up to capacity issues because animals are coming in on a daily basis. Now that's something that's not easily fixable in a very short term, whether it's a vet shortage or labor shortages. There's one thing that can fix that and how we could all work together and save lives. And that is through fostering. So maybe you're not like me and you're going to foster a lot of animals over the time period. I tend to foster some of the older dogs, like you see the older Mastiff, Pit Bull, or little dachshund there, or the really young puppies that fit into my household very, very easily. But it's really simple. If we look at just the number of households that have pets, if just 2% more would actually foster one pet a year, you don't even have to foster all the pets that are on the slide, but just one a year, we could eliminate the euthanasia that's happening because the result of a lack of capacity to care for the pets in a building. Okay, so that's going to wrap up where we are on our shelter system. I'm going to say right now, shelters are struggling. Pets are at risk of euthanasia, and they are being euthanized at higher rates, but we as the community could help. But pets in shelters is really only one piece of the puzzle. Now going forward, we're going to look at some data that we currently have about total pet ownership in the US. First, there have been a number of studies that have been done on the source of acquisition of pets. And in the end, there are three primary sources for dog acquisition and cat acquisition in the US. Dogs and cats share that a third of them will be adopted from animal welfare organizations. And on the right-hand side, friends, families, and other sort of general sources become responsible for another third of how pets are acquired in the US. There's a difference when it comes to dogs and cats with respect to dogs will also be purchased from breeders, and then cats, often people acquire cats as they're found as strays, or maybe their neighbor found them as strays or a litter of kittens. And while each of those surveys will drill down into more details and ask more, a variety of different questions, you can still see from a recent Haubrey Petco Love survey on pet care, race and ethnicity, and the pet care ecosystem, that those same 3 buckets hold true for both dogs in the survey, friends, breeder, and animal shelters, and for cats. Top 3 reasons: animal shelters, friend and family, and stray or someone else found them. When we look at total pets owned, this is also determined from survey data. The American Pet Products Association and the AVMA are the most utilized sources in looking at how many households own pets and what are the total number of dogs and cats in the US. And you can see from this information that there are some differences. And the APPA data here is from the recent survey in 2021 and then 2020 AVMA report. But generally, clearly a majority of US households own pets, and there's a lot of them, over probably 100 million dogs and over 75 million cats in the US. And while the exact numbers differ a little bit between the APPA and AVMA, generally all surveys show that year after year, we have an increasing number of households owning pets. In fact, in 1988, 56% of households included pets per the APPA survey then, and now that percent is over 70%. And while we have these national statistics, what we don't have is local statistics, and we don't have these numbers geographically in each community about the number of households that have pets, nor the total number of pets in communities. In fact, formulas are provided, but those formulas are assuming similarities to national pet ownership statistics, which is why sometimes we see headlines from this in the Washington Post about the differences between varying surveys on pet ownership. But the truth is, we simply need better data, not only to care for our pets, but also to help people in our communities. Most communities just simply need more data to better help them prepare and better help them care for their community. So there is already significant spending happening on a local level for municipal pet sheltering. It varies substantially by state. It varies substantially by community. But if communities had better data on how many pets were owned, they perhaps could develop more proactive solutions and reduce some of the spending on the municipal sheltering level. For instance, housing plans. If we know what the level of pet ownership is in a community, community planners could reduce the cost, perhaps, of the impact on animal shelters by assuring adequate pet-friendly housing, or perhaps really looking at working with insurance providers to eliminate restrictions on pet ownership. And of course, we know that it's been well recognized about the importance of planning for pets in disaster preparedness, but we don't always have the data to properly plan on pet populations per community. This could be further utilized in looking at our social vulnerability index and perhaps including pets in this information to help plan for evacuations and emergency situations. Because at the end of the day, pets will continue to be part of our family. They make us laugh. We have close relationships with our pets, and really they're our best friends. They're allowed on the couch, they're allowed in our bed. We celebrate our holidays with them. The love of pets continues to be universal. And thank goodness, because their love improves our mental and our physical health. Even recognized by the CDC, keeping pets healthy keeps people healthy too. Not only that, but they're a force for good. 75% of pet parents agree that pets help bring people together from different walks of life. They make our community stronger, and they help us connect with other people. Pets are here to stay. Pet parentship continues to grow in the US. And as pet ownership and the importance of pets in our lives increases, it is an appropriate role for government to count those pets in our US census. It will help us better plan, not only for the caring of pets, but for the caring of the people in our communities across the country. Pets are certainly our family, so now's the time to count them as such.
Thank you for helping me thrive and grow. You've saved me in more ways than you'll ever know.
This is Noodle, and she very quickly became our little adventure buddy.
Coming home from deployment, without him, I don't think I would have gotten through it.
I think it was really important to choose love. My name is Yukari Yamahiro. This past May, I was pregnant and I was walking out of the hospital and I was unfortunately spat on the face. It was an anti-Asian hate incident. I was really devastated and shattered. I came home and Butter really comforted me. The community really came out. Other dog owners picked me up the next day and walked with me. And I really appreciated it.
She's been a comfort to me. It's just a big blessing.
When you have a child who needs different medical attention, she's not alone.
I feel just so blessed every time that I come home, and she's so consistently enthusiastic to see me.
I didn't realize it at the time, but it was as if I was bringing in two babies. They mean so much to me.
I got married. I tell everybody all the time, I didn't adopt a dog, I got a dog and a wife.
Well, I didn't adopt Riot to fix my problems or make me feel better. He wound up helping tremendously and gave me a reason to wake up in the morning and something to take care of and tend to.
Every single day, I feel loved, I feel present, I feel grateful. How she makes my life brighter? Every way. If you adopt a pet, you can see how redemption is possible.
Dogs can have an impact not just on the owner, but also the community itself.
I have a new best friend, so thank you. I promise I will spoil him. He spoils me.
Thank you, Susanne. That was an amazing, fascinating presentation. I think that was probably the most clear-eyed look at what's going on in our shelters that I've seen. And I'm really fascinated with this idea that we need better data and we need to really count our pets and make sure that we know which families have them so we can plan for the future. And our members of Congress, of course, are watching and their staffs. And so can you tell me kind of what they should take away from this and maybe what they could do to be supportive?
Yeah, sure, Steve. Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's something that I thought about a lot in trying to say what presentation, what information could I present during Pet Week on Capitol Hill. I really do believe that I think the number one takeaway is I think there have been other attempts at trying to bring pets into the US Census, and maybe the timing wasn't right. I had heard from one individual who said that came up in 1984. But really, the status of pets in our lives in 1984 versus 2022 has changed significantly. Pets, they're more like most families are going to have a pet. If 70% of households have a pet, and they're not in the backyard, they're in our beds, they're on the couch, they're part of our family, they impact all of our decisions. I really do think that to solve a lot of, problems that exist for our community, not just for our pets, but for our communities and for the people in our communities, we really do need to get a better understanding of where the pets are, which families, which households own them, and really use that information and utilize it to provide better solutions for pets. And so I think, to me, that's really thought about what could be the number one thing that we could do to help further the betterment of pets in our lives. And I think really understanding where they are and a better count of them is a good start.
with $4 billion being spent on by governments around the country on.
Yeah, and the 4 billion, I think that one included some nonprofit spending, but at the end of the day, those are deductions from, spending on the IRS side, charitable deductions. So I think the municipal spending was around 2 billion. And then there was some other spending as far as people making donations to local animal welfare organizations, clinics that provided affordable care. So there's a lot of spending for our pets. I think now we just need better information to make sure we're very efficient. I definitely don't want to decrease any spending in the shelters because they need the money right now, but we could plan a lot better to care for those pets.
That's great. I was struck also by the sort of the crunch that shelters are facing right now. So could you reiterate what pet lovers, what people can do to help right now? There's a lot of animal lovers on Capitol Hill.
I know. I would love eventually to see something that would move towards what we have in the children foster care system, right? We shouldn't be caring for pets in buildings. And while we may not be ready to make that from a regulatory shift, like moving out of shelters to having everything cared for in fosters, I think that everyone, again, if you look at that 2%, if just 2% more of pet parents would foster just one animal a year, just one, we wouldn't have the capacity issues at shelters that we have today that result in euthanasia. Pets will eventually be adopted. They just need a place to stay until they can get adopted. And we're relying on a building and the capacity in a building to care for those pets, that if we can't move them through quickly, those pets are going to be euthanized for nothing more than the fact that they didn't have a place to stay. We can all change that. We can all become a part of it. And everyone doesn't have to be like me. You don't have to foster multiple pets all the time in litters, just one a year. And we can get there if we can increase that percentage. All of us can do a little bit. There's always volunteering and donating and everything else, but that to me is the most direct path by not relying on a building to care for pets.
That's fantastic. And some of those pets need to get back where they belong. Tell us a little more about Petco Love Lost.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we always look at Petco Love is what can we do to solve something nationally to help the local organizations. And there isn't a national lost and found database. So what Petco Love Lost is really working with the shelters and first getting all the shelter pets in there. Still working our way through, but we've got about 2,000 organizations in there. And we're really focused on those large organizations at first, but then also getting, just anyone in the community. If you lose a pet, post it up on Petco Love Lost. So if someone finds a pet, you can just connect directly with them within Petco Love Lost. You can chat. You don't even have to share information until you verify it's the right pet. But if we reunite pets in our communities, we really reduce the burden in our shelters. They don't have to go to the shelter and then they have to find the pet owner. You just find those owners, the people that lost and the people that found them, connect them directly, get those pets back home, and really reduce the number of strays. Remember, the number one reason pets are coming into shelters is strays. If we could reduce that with something like a national lost and found database, that'd help really reduce the burden on the shelters.
That's amazing. I hope everybody uses that, shares it with as many people as they possibly can.
Anytime you see someone post on Nextdoor or whatever, that lost pet, just say, tell them to post on petcolovelost.org too. And that'll just help us build that path. That's great.
That's great. It seems like Petco Love is doing so many wonderful things to help pets. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Oh, I think everyone can do something and, figure out what your way is to help pets in your community. We've started with a real focus on shelters initially and reducing shelter euthanasia. We also are increasing efforts to really looking at how do we help pet parents get the care that they need and afford that care. So increasing access to care. And so I think everyone can just find their way. Sometimes it may be just helping a family friend that may not be able to afford care for their pet and avoid them from relinquishing it to a shelter. Sometimes it's helping someone find a home. Whatever anyone can do to help, each little piece. So I look at it for us at Petco Love, $2 at the register makes $40 million that we're able to help and disperse to organizations saving lives. That $2, just $2 helps there. Think about what you can do individually to help a pet in your community. Everyone can do something, figure out what fits in your life and help another one.
It's just an amazing mission, an amazing commitment to helping pets and people. Susanne, thank you so much for joining us here for Pet Week.
Great to be here again, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Well, that wraps up day 2 of Pet Week on Capitol Hill. Thanks to today's sponsors for making this programming possible, and thanks to all of Pet Week on Capitol Hill's sponsors for bringing us this important educational programming. It continues tomorrow. And if you missed a session, it's all available on demand at the Havry Facebook page and on petnight.com. So we hope you'll come back and join us. Thanks again for watching.